go ahead and start our regular live stream. I want to encourage you guys, if you share it while you're here, people actually can watch while we're doing it. So it's kind of cool. All right, I'm going to do this. Wash. Yes, that's the wash your hands. You want to handle the baby.
Where's the baby?
But I don't want to give the baby up to anybody except your mom. He has more hair than Hoff.
Unfortunately. Did you have a lot of hair when you were born?
Judah had a lot of hair. Julie had like no hair, the poor girl. Yeah, Judah, we could do a full-on faux hawk. That's what I always did with him. Like the first couple weeks of life, I would just faux hawk it up and give him the big. He's just got a crew cut going. Julie was bald. Baldest to meet her, and I had the same haircut. Or Julie was like bald for a long time too. I got a Bible. I got that. I don't have some water. Agua sounds good. All right, is everyone who needs one?
Right there. Is it open?
Mine now.
Because mine's out. I'm gonna drink out of this.
Nice. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
When we've got a Bible, it makes life so much easier to read along. Pass the Bible around if you see someone who needs one. Does the lady with the chips have a Bible? Someone with the lady with the chips a Bible. You can always share with the person next to you, but I encourage you guys, and if you don't have a pen or a highlighter, if you've got your own Bible, tap that thing up. Make it your own. Get those notes in there.
Really? We're finishing Samuel?
Got 2 more weeks to finish up First Samuel. Because we've got like 15 verses, 15 chapters to go. So I think we're gonna do 7 or 8 today, 7 next week, or 7 this week, 8 next week. But I encourage you guys, like, this is like one of my first Bibles, like when you guys get going through a Bible, it should look like that. Lots of lines, lots of words, lots of writing, lots of notes to your wife. I'm just saying, one day you'll look in your Bible one day and be like, 1 Corinthians chapter 8. Baby, you're hot. Like, that's an interesting note. But then you'll remember, like, oh, yeah, it's probably just like, you pass it. It's okay. It's okay. My new Bible, right? I'm staying with the times. My new Bible, I've got hashtags and emojis in there, right? Just to keep up with, what's going on. Maybe not an actual emoji, but I do have winky faces and stuff next to things. Some of you probably saw on Facebook. I don't know how many of you may have seen it. Where we go? Genesis. Is it 36? Wait, no, not 36. Genesis 39:6. I've got it highlighted with a smiley face next to it. How many people saw that on Facebook? It's my life verse.
I saw like somebody's attacking me on Facebook.
Well, okay, that was the trolls. That was a whole other story of being attacked by crazy people.
It was something about him being
Joseph was not handsome.
Hey, no, it says Joseph was handsome in form and appearance.
I don't know why you're saying that.
What happened though? Why were you
Made a comment about circumcision on the internet.
Oh yeah, that's
and people out of everywhere. Like, no one I knew, no one who knew anyone. There was no, like, you can see if they're like, if a mutual friend. No mutual friends, nothing. They don't even live in Washington State. And people just started blowing up my posts.
Hashtag.
No. So you can search things even if it's not hashtags. Like, anything you put on Facebook, like when you see like, all the trending stuff, not everyone uses that hashtag. But it's like Facebook can see, oh, someone's talking about Trump and Russia, and there was something about like telling a diplomat about like an ISIS thing. It's trending. Well, if you look at the post down there, it doesn't all have the hashtag, but they're talking about that topic. And so Facebook, they track everything you say. If you're afraid of the government tracking you, well, you probably should get off social media. But if you're like most Americans, I'll just keep using social media and get tracked.
It don't matter.
But yeah, because the point is that so any word you say that there's like a buzzword, you can search a word and you can find all the people who are using that word in their posts and make comments. So yeah, so they saw the word circumcision and they went crazy.
What they say?
Crazy stuff. We'll talk about circumcision later in our chapter here. A few chapters with him. That'll come into play.
Somebody's like, yeah, it's not a thing that you should be chosen or you should be like forced to do, but you should be you should have the choice to do it. And I was just like, I'm just like,
Yeah, I know. I would honestly say, most teenage boys who've been circumcised probably are like, yeah, better then than now. So better as an infant. I'd rather not have those memories. So all that said, we are in 1 Samuel chapter 16. Chapter 16. We do need to get a move on to cover the ground. My goal is to get to chapter 24 tonight. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 9 chapters.
Goodness.
Boom.
4 minus 16.
I'm just making sure I had it right. You kids wear on me after a while. The math skills are just
Count
slow.
it off on his fingers twice.
Yeah.
Well, because I thought I was wrong. Like, I'm like confirming it. Like, okay. What happened last week? Really, week 1, we focused on Samuel. Week 2, we focused on
Saul.
Saul. Right. Now, this is not to be confused with the Saul of the New Testament, who is also known as Paul. There we go. This is King Saul, the first king of Israel. So now we get to see a new character introduced to us. Who do you guys think that is?
David.
David. Right.
Tell me what it's David.
Okay.
So, now, who remembers, the big thing is this. Who remembers last week what the big climax was in chapter 15?
Wasn't
Saul
it
was
like,
no longer king.
yeah, because he wanted to do things his way and not go through God's way, like
What
sneak
did
his
he do?
own. What was it? He God said to kill everything that was evil, and he wanted to keep the sheep, keep the animals, but God said everything, and he's like, but shh. And then that was it. He wanted to keep things.
He
his
kept
way.
things, yeah. He didn't kill everyone. Now, what people group was this? The Amalekites. She usually whispers when she thinks I give up a shot, but she's like, no one knows this one. I'm just going to say it.
Why did I have my food? I was distracted.
So the Amalekites, good. Now, here's something I forgot last week. So, if you are a note taker, and last week maybe you wrote down Esther 3:1, there's a whole lot of verses in Esther, but that's just the first one I wrote down. Because God says, Saul, I want you to kill every single Amalekite. I forgot in my old Bible, I had a ton of great notes on this chapter. And as soon as the study was over and people, half the people left, I busted out my old original Bible and I forgot this, and we started talking about a couple of the things. And how can God kill a whole group of people? Well, again, part of it is God knows the future.
Yeah.
We can hypothesize, right? Well, what if the kid grew up and did this? How could you kill the child? What if he could have? Well, God doesn't have to say what if. He knows exactly what would happen. And so if God, who knows everything and everything that could be, says this is a good idea, we should probably just trust it's a good idea. Even if it looks stupid to us. No, God, that's a dumb idea. Wait a minute, did I just tell God that was a dumb idea? No, he knows. He knows better. And here's one thing when you talk about Esther. In the book of Esther in the Bible, a guy by the name of Haman almost wipes out the entire Jewish race. He had the king, the most powerful man in the world, the Persian king, King Xerxes, from the movie 300. That's who it is. It's the exact same guy. He was the most powerful ruler in the whole world, and he had given the thumbs up. Okay, on this date, all my soldiers will march in all the cities and kill every single Jew. Esther saves the day. But Haman was an Agagite, a descendant of King Agag, king of the Amalekites, who Saul was supposed to kill. Now, Agag died, but Saul obviously kept a bunch of people alive because here's the catch. I forgot this last week. The very last chapter, chapter 31 of 1 Samuel, and the very first chapter of 2 Samuel. The end of 1 Samuel ends with the death of Saul. the beginning of 2 Samuel recaps the death of Saul. And you read there in 2 Samuel 1:8. So if you want to somewhere next to 1 Samuel 15 where it talks about the Amalekites and killing it all, I wrote 2 Samuel 1:8. Saul, when he dies, he's killed by an Amalekite. So the very same people he was told, kill them all, don't let them live, he let a bunch live. And one of the ones he let live ends up being one of the people who ends up killing him. How many people have seen Saving Private Ryan? Remember they let the one German soldier live and he ends up going back and killing one of the soldiers? Like, they let him go with mercy, and then he comes back and kills one of their guys. It's kind of the same story for those who've seen that movie. So anyway, in the end, we see kind of verse 24 down to verse 34. Saul's sad. No, Samuel, don't leave me. He grabs his robe. He tears off part of Samuel's robe. And Samuel turns back to Saul and says, just like you just tore my robe away from me, the kingdom has been torn from you. It's gone. It's not yours anymore. And although he was still sitting as king, God did not recognize him anymore as the king of Israel. They got to find a new guy. And as we go into the first 2 chapters tonight, one thing I want to do for those who saw my little promo video I put out there is I'm going to take an attempt to prove all of the kids' books wrong.
Hello?
We'll find out.
Oh.
But the question is this, though, is that I grew up watching movies, kids' videos, nursery stories, Sunday school stories, books and everything, and even most pastors, I'd say, painting a picture for me. And the question is this, is that if you've always thought it was one way, but the Bible obviously teaches it different, are you willing to change? Because I'll tell you, the hardest thing for people is changing the tradition they've been brought up in. If you've been brought up in a tradition for your whole life, it's hard when you're a teenager. It's harder when you're 20s. Don't even try and change your grandma. You all know your grandmas aren't changing, right? Like grandma's she's pretty much grandma. Like she's not going anywhere. I'm not saying guys can't change someone's heart. But the longer we stick with our traditions, the harder they are to give up, even if the truth is put there right in front of you. So, 20-minute introduction done. Don't laugh. Okay. So, in chapter 16, how the Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I've rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I'm sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons. How can I go? If Saul hears, he'll kill me. Just take a heifer with you. I have come to sacrifice, and say I've come to sacrifice the Lord. So he invites Jesse, gets a sacrifice ready. I'm going to skip a little bit. I'm in like verse 4 or 5. He says they come peaceably. And so verse 6, he's getting Jesse and his kids. God says one of Jesse's kids is going to be king. Verse 6, he gets Eliab. And Samuel looks at him, he's like, surely the Lord's anointed is before him. Like, this is it. His oldest son. This guy's buff. He's buff. He's good looking. He commands himself as he enters the room. Samuel's like, that has got king written all over it. Verse 7, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or his physical stature, because I have refused him. I highlighted this next part in my Bible. For the Lord does not see as a man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Okay? God doesn't see people the way we see people. You see someone who you think is weak, God might see that person as strong. You see someone as ugly, God sees beautiful. It all just depends on what the Lord sees. He looks at the inward parts. He's not caring what we see on the outside. So, of course, if it's not son number 1, it's probably son number 2, Abinadab. Well, nope, ended up not being him. And Shammah, they go through 7 sons, and none of them are it. And he's like, okay, Jesse brought all his sons before me. Why is it there's no king here? God's going to be a king. So, verse 11, Samuel said to Jesse, are all the young men here? Then he said, there remains yet the youngest, and there he is keeping the sheep. And Samuel said to Jesse, send and bring him, for we will not sit down till he gets here, till he comes. And so he brought him in. He was a ruddy, with bright eyes, and good looking. And the Lord said, arise, anoint him, for this is the one. Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of the brothers and said, the Spirit of the Lord came upon, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. And so Samuel rose and went to Ramah, back to Ramah where his home camp is. Here's David. David is now anointed the king, the youngest of his brothers. Now,
Same as David and Goliath.
which is next chapter. So, we're getting there. Should I cut to the chase with my big, like,
No.
Yeah.
I got a no and I got a yeah. My first teaching point is actually in this chapter, and we're going to go into even more teaching points. Here's the question. I want you guys, if you are familiar with the story of David and Goliath, I'm assuming most of you have heard of David and Goliath, but I can't, not everyone. Nar, I'm sure, knows. But, okay. I know. 1 Samuel 16, verse 14. But here's what I need you guys to do. If you know the story of David and Goliath, I just want you guys in your heads, come up with the number. How old is David? He's going to fight Goliath. You've seen the kids' books. You've seen all the stories. How old is David?
It's probably like
I've been
18.
laughing. He's like 30.
Like 12.
I mean, the Bible doesn't say, so I'm not going to give you a number.
Ah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Here's the thing, though.
We said young men and the youngest.
I'm going to my book for authority here. Ruth and Naomi, that's his grandmother. Can't be that far. There's Saul, David's the first king. Here he is. David. There's the oil. For those at home.
Those
Who
at
wants to see
home.
that? Yeah, hey, you never know. Let's see, David and Goliath here. Oh, here's him in the king's armor. We're going to see that in a second. Your Bible says like this. Why do I even use my Bible when I got this bad boy right here?
Yeah.
Him in the sling. I've got the Chuck Smith version of the story too somewhere. Okay. So here's the thing: is that's like not an uncommon picture book for kids. How old is that, David?
How old looks like he's
12.
yeah.
All right. Here's the only thing I was going at. This is not a huge thing, but yeah, I think David was a young man. Was not a boy. A lot of books portray him as a boy. A lot of pastors portray him as a boy. We're going to go through here, and I'm just going to show a few reasons why. I don't think he was a boy. I don't think he was that old. But here's one thing. In the New Testament, when it says, like, you're young men, let the young men do this. When we read Titus and 1st and 2nd Timothy, there's these encouragements for young men. Young men is like under 40. Young men is not like teenagers, even though I think it's a very applicable book in this day and age for young men to be thinking about. It meant you're not an old man. Like there wasn't an in the middle man. They didn't have middle age. You're an old man, which were really like 60s and up kind of thing. Younger men in your prime, in your 30s, in your 40s, you're still the leaders at the work. You're the leaders in the army.
Well,
You're-
the disciples are pretty young. No,
No, they were. They were like late teens, early 20s. They were very young,
Well, Peter was like the oldest.
and he was like my age.
Yeah,
So
young
the
man.
point is this, though, is that my first thing in here, that word na'ar for young, it's N-A hyphen or apostrophe A-R. When you see young in the Bible, it's super broad in the Old Testament. It's a Hebrew word, Old Testament. Moses was like just old enough to put in a little basket and send down the river, and the Pharaoh's daughter catches him. He was called a young, same word. Adonijah, one of David's sons, he was leading armies and trying to overthrow his father. He was called young. And all the people there were called young. And an emphasis here, we have David's oldest brother and then David, right? Well, assuming, yes, he's the youngest of 8 brothers. We don't even know if there's sisters. How much older is that brother? Like 16 years older? I mean, it's like there's like 2 years apart. No sisters, assuming. Just all boys. Well, either way, notice in verse 11, are all the young men here. Even the oldest brother to the youngest brother all being called young men. So that word young doesn't really tell us an age. It's just not an old man. But we're going to go on here and learn about David. I just want to emphasize this because what it is this is just, we get these pictures in our heads. And the thing is that like you're going to send your kids to school someday and they're going to teach them about dinosaurs, and they're going to teach them about how the earth was made, and they're going to teach them all these things. And then the kids are going to get confused because someone at church is teaching them about a flood, and they're teaching them about God and the Bible. And who's telling me the truth?
Jesus.
You know, the Bible says that God created dinosaurs with people. That's a whole rabbit trail. Jimmy's not here, so I don't have to talk as much about it. It's his favorite topic. But
The Flintstones got it right.
Flintstones, exactly. But the idea is that we get these pictures in our heads, and sometimes they're hard for us to get out once we've seen them so long. I've seen so many kids book my whole life of David being this little boy, little tiny David, Veggie Tales, little tiny Junior Asparagus coming in there. Huh?
Portrayed that way, or is like you're young.
You know, I think people just assumed he was a young boy.
But you think it's like more like.
Well, let's check out. Well, there's more information. So let's read the rest, and I'll just highlight some of those points as we go. So, verse 14. Check out what happens. It said in verse 13, the Spirit of the Lord came upon David. So that's a coming upon, like God's got his Spirit on David, working in David. Verse 14, but the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a distressing spirit from the Lord troubled him.
Is that what you're talking about? Can a blessing be bad or something like that? Or like?
That was that devotional I did from the hospital. We're going to come up to that in a sec. So the idea is, that's what we're coming up to. So God gave Saul in 1 Samuel 16:14. 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 14. Is where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. He gave him a bad spirit. Here's the first thing I want to tell you guys. God is not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. 1 Peter 3:15. I think. Yeah. No, 1 Peter 3:9. 2 Peter 3:9. I was thinking of a different verse. 1 Peter 3:15 is always be ready to give defense. God is not willing that anyone should perish, but God's desire is for everyone to go to heaven. That doesn't mean he's going to just say everyone on in, but he's willing to do anything to try to lure people in there, to woo them in, right? It's kind of like Alex likes this one chick. Now he's willing to do anything to get her to like him, aside from knock her out and just drag her back to his cave and say, ho, got girl. You know, like, but the idea is, and I'm just joking, I don't know where Alex is at with any girls, but the point is like winning a girl over to you, right? I want to woo, I want her to fall in love with me. I would do anything to get her attention, right? I can't just knock her out and take her. That's like God and you. He would do anything to get your attention, but he's not going to break your free will and knock you out and drag you back to heaven. Saul, here's the difference. Saul, I think, is saved. The Spirit came in Saul, and then the Spirit came upon Saul. Remember, he was prophesying when he came back from the hill, and the Spirit was upon Saul, and God was using Saul in great ways. When it says the Spirit of the Lord departed, that was like the baptism of the Holy Spirit. That's like God working through Saul. He's like, I'm not working through you anymore. You've been rebelling. I'm no longer going to work through you. I don't think this means that God has kicked Saul out of heaven. I think we got a guy backslidden, rebelling. So God gives him this distressing spirit. How does that work? I don't know exactly. Some think, like Job. In Job, the Satan's like, you should let me go at Job, God. And God's like, okay, I will allow you, Satan, to go after Job. Up until that point, Satan's like, no one can touch Job. You've put protection around him. No demon could attack Job. God was protecting him. You guys can have that same protection. If God chooses to give you protection. Stay in his good gracious. Maybe that'll be a reason he'll give you protection. But God said, no, Satan, I'll allow it. It's possible here that Satan was allowed to go after Saul. God said, okay, you want to send some demons to pester Saul? Go right ahead, pester Saul. Or maybe it's just like a depressing spirit. We don't know all the details, but here's the key.
Isn't it kind of hard though? Because like, in the end, that kind of goes back to the same question. Is like once saved, always saved. And it's kind of like, well, no matter like what you do, people will be going out and casting demons in the Lord's name. But at the end, it's still, well, your works. You're not counting on your works. You're counting on what your heart likes. I don't know. That's kind of like.
Well, here's the thing. It's like getting saved, right? We see a lot of people in the Bible get saved, but they don't finish strong. The pastors' conference I just went to a few weeks ago during spring break, the theme of the conference, stay the course. We talked about this through Timothy and Titus. Like, I mean, look, I get all worked up because, like, I had to teach on this stuff. And I get worked up. I have tears well up when I have to tell you guys, like, stay the course. I've seen too many of you guys veer off and leave. And not for good things. Some kids get busy. They go off to, I mean, there's going up, that's one thing, right? Versus the kids who went back to their old life. They didn't stay the course. They made it a year, right? You guys, if Jesus doesn't come back, or if you don't come to an untimely death, you've got 40, 50, 60 years to try to stay the course. Stick with it. Keep growing with God. Don't fall off the wayside. Saul was going strong. God made him king. God was using him to slay the enemies, to overthrow armies. But Saul started getting proud, full of himself, doing things his way, not God's way. At that point, God said, not I'm kicking you out of heaven. He says, I'm taking my spirit away in the sense of like, I used to have my spirit upon you, supernaturally enabling you to do things. You don't get that anymore. He'll actually give it again later, briefly, momentarily, a taste. So let's just watch what happens. But here's all I was trying to say, which became a short story long. God is trying to restore Saul. I believe God wants Saul walking close with him. And sometimes it's making Saul feel alone and out there. Like, I'm going to let you have a distressing period, Saul. If you want to reject me, watch how depressed you get. Watch how sucky it is to be a Christian trying to live it in the world. You're never going to be happy because the whole time you're doing these things you know are wrong, and it's going to bug you, because you know it's wrong. So Saul's all depressed.
I'm about to ask, is like, so is conviction on our own heart, or does God bestow conviction upon them?
I think the Holy Spirit is called the convictor. Like, he convicts. That is one of his jobs.
Like he's over here with
To like whisper in your ear and convict you. Now, just because he's whispering doesn't mean you have to listen, right? Like, that's the thing, is he can convict. That's not control.
Yeah.
He's not twisting your arm. He's just reminding you. So here we go. Summarizing to get through the rest of this chapter. I'll highlight some important words, though. He's like, I'm so depressed. Can someone find someone to cheer me up? So one of his guys is like, hey, I know this guy. He's got a son, plays the harp, like, it's like, sounds great. You'll love it. You'll feel good. Okay? He goes down here in verse 18, talking about David. He goes, he's a skillful in playing. Look at his description of David now. A mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, handsome in person, and the Lord is with him. So again, we were talking about the boy, right? Is he a little boy? Is he a young man? Well, here they call him a man of valor and a man of war. So for whatever reason, he's obviously done enough in life to get this title that someone can call him, you know. If you guys say, you know, Raul Torres, man of great accomplishments, like, obviously he's had to have done something if I'm going to say that. He calls him a man of war. He's obviously done some fighting of some sort. So he sends the messengers down to get him. He totally loves them. It says in verse 21, so David came to Saul and stood before him, and he loved him greatly. Check this out. And he, David, became Saul's armor bearer. Remember Jonathan and his armor bearer? They went up and started killing people, and Jonathan's armor bearer was stabbing him. Jonathan knocked him down. The armor bearer would stab him and kill him. That's what David became to the king. No, well, see, he was anointed as king, right? But here's the thing, is Saul doesn't know. Samuel came and poured the oil saying, God recognizes you as king, but you don't sit on the throne yet. It's actually, we're not even going to get to David being on the throne tonight. That's the interesting thing. God recognizes it, but he doesn't have a throne. You know, God can anoint you to be an elder, to be a pastor, to be a missionary, long before you get a church, long before you get a seat on the elder board, long before you, God recognizes it, puts the calling on your life. So God anointed him, you are my king. You are the one who's going to be king. You might not be sitting on the throne yet, but here he is. So now he becomes armor bearer. And here's where it says in verse 22 and 3, which is my little devotional was the other night. Then Saul said to Jesse, saying, Please let David stand before me, for he has found favor in my sight. And so it was, whenever the Spirit from God was upon Saul, the bad one, that David would take a harp and play it with his hand. Then Saul would become refreshed and well, and the distressing spirit would depart from him. Check out a live video I made on Facebook a few days ago if you want more on that. I'm going to go over it tonight. But basically, in short, what I was talking about, 1 Corinthians 5. Alexis wrote to me about it because in Matthew it's covered as well. Kicking someone out of the church. Touchy subject. Dare a pastor ever kick someone out of church? Well, if you understand the purpose, you're not kicking out bad people. You're kicking out someone. 1 Corinthians 5. This guy was sleeping with his stepmom. We talked about that last week or the week before in jail and all freaked out. The idea was that guy was kicked out because by just hanging around church and living in his sin, he wasn't changing. He had no reason to try and change. But when he was like, you know what? Listen, bro, you want to call yourself a Christian, you want to keep living that life, you need to pick. Stay, get right with God, or just go live that life. And by doing that, what happened in 2 Corinthians, that guy came back. He got right with God. He fixed himself. And I've always heard it taught, and here's a good example. If you let just people live like that, when they go to church, they hang out with believers, there's actually a spiritual rubbing off. Even if I'm in sin and screwed up, if I hang out with Daniel, and I hang out with Anthony, and I hang out with Alex, hang out with Raul, the Holy Spirit and those guys will wear off on me. Don't worry, just 1 second. So the idea is he was actually being relieved of what? Of the spirit God put there. Do you think God put the spirit there just so it could disappear? No, I think God put it there on purpose to try and convict him, to try and actually bug him to the point he would change. But now that David's here playing the harp, no reason to change now. He found a way to satisfy himself. And it was through a believer, kind of a pseudo David spirituality is rubbing off on Saul. Now Saul doesn't have to change. That's why the idea is it probably would have been better if Saul just remained. Not David's fault. David's just being obedient. But it's just an interesting thought. Now, I've got actually a few of these chapters totally paraphrased in just a few sentences. So the fact we're actually spending a lot of time in 16 and 17, they're good chapters to hang out in. Check this out. The Philistines gathered together an army. I'm going to start paraphrasing most of my way down as we get a little ways here. And all of a sudden, in verse 4 of chapter 17, a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Go get a pen. There's pens right there in the box.
Wow.
You just knocked down the camera. I think I'll leave it there. It's alive. No, there's actually two.
Down there?
There's different ones. Yeah, get back to your seat.
Okay.
Box of pens right there. Box of pens.
Where? That's like
Pens.
that is
There's
pen.
3 pens in there.
I know.
Those
I'm
are ballpoint
sorry.
pens.
I'm sorry, Daniel.
All right.
Okay.
Goliath of Gath, the champion. How tall is 6 cubits and a span? And a span.
And a little bit.
6 inches. 9 foot 6 inches tall.
What is
Goliath of Gath. A big bad guy.
9 foot?
9 foot 6.
Why is it covered the book?
9'6".
Goliath of Gath.
Why is he on the cover of it?
Why is he on the cover? Because everyone loves the story of David and Goliath. All right, so Goliath is the bad guy. He is wearing chainmail, right? Like the little tiny links that the knights and stuff wear. His chainmail chest armor weighs 126 pounds. He has a spear, they say the size of a weaver's beam. He's going to die. There's a second guy in the book of the Bible that dies who has a spear the size of a weaver's beam. He was an Egyptian, killed by a dude named Benaiah. That's my son's name. Anyway.
That's what you mentioned.
I know. But the weaver's beam. Now, we're talking like 8 foot long, like big long. I don't even know how big a weaver's beam is. That's not as like an exact measurement, but big long thing. Because a weaver's beam with these huge beams, when they're making carpets and stuff, it's wider than the carpet. So if you're imagining someone's making like a living room carpet, the beam has to be longer than that. So they're big. And the tip, the metal tip of steel, 15 pounds. Imagine the 10-pound weight plus a 5-pound weight from the weight room on the end of an 8-foot stick. You're supposed to throw it. It's a very tippy Those are hard to do, like lateral raises with 15-pound weights, let alone on the end of an 8-foot-long stick. The guy was huge. Now check it out. How many people have seen the movie? I have all these movie references. Troy. That was it.
Yeah.
Troy. Anthony's seen all the war movies. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. In the beginning of Troy, they demonstrate something that's really common back in this day. This was not an uncommon thing. Rather than a gigantic army fighting a gigantic army and tons of bloodshed, they would basically like have a gentleman's agreement. Here's the deal. You pick your best guy, and we will pick our best guy. And whoever wins, that's like the whole battle. If your best guy wins, we will surrender. If your best guy wins, whoever, then you surrender. Back and forth. So when the Philistines show up, and they got homeboy at 9'6", probably weighing 400 pounds, wouldn't be, there's gigantic strongmen that weigh 300, 350 really easy at like 7 feet tall, 6.5 feet tall. So he could weigh 500 pounds. I'm not imagining a basketball player here. I'm imagining a barrel-chested, gigantic guy. Just a beast of a man. A Nephilim. And so, the fallen ones. We'll talk about that another night. But, here he is, calling them out. Verse 8. Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And you, the servants of Saul, choose a man for yourselves and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants. And then he goes on, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David, right, he shows up on scene. Now, verse 15, it says that David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep. So David normally was with Saul, Mr. Armor Bearer, but he would occasionally go back home and take care of the animals, kind of like Anthony on the farm. Normally hanging out, but he'd go back and feed Curly and the rest of the cows sometimes. So one day, he basically gets some bread. I'm going to start paraphrasing here. Dad says, hey, you're on your way back to the army. Can you take this food to your brothers and find out what's going on? Here's some cheese. Give it to the general or the captain. Like try and butter up the captain. Hey, here's some cheese. Take care of my sons kind of thing. And so David gets there, and there is the champion, Goliath. He's calling everyone out. Verse 25, so the men of Israel said, have you seen the man who's come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. So they're saying, like, where have you been, David? Like, you haven't heard about this guy? Whoever kills him is going to be rich. He's going to marry the king's daughter, and his dad, their whole family, will be tax-free, which is a really good deal back then. So David spoke, saying, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is the uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? You like that? What is David's mentality? Remember, as we get into this, David is a man who's got a heart after God. He's a murderer. He's an adulterer, essentially a rapist. He's a liar. But God still says, this guy's got a heart after me. Because even after all those things, he always had a heart for God. He was a screw-up who loved God. At best, all of us in this room could claim that. Bunch of screw-ups, but got hearts for God. Got a heart for God, even though I might mess up at stuff. And so what is he saying? Not, do I get money? Do I get that? It's just the fact that someone just tried to defy God's army. This is God's army, and we have God on our side. So, Eliab gets angry at him in verse 28. But basically, they go to Saul in verse 31. Then David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him, for your servant, David, will go and fight with this Philistine. Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he is a man of war from his youth. So here's the thing where I think people get that David's young. I think he's young, but he's not like a kid. Realistically, it's kind of like if someone came to town, right? Have you guys seen God's Not Dead? The first one. Most of you have probably seen that. Or a bunch of you haven't. Go find it. It's a good movie. Right? Who's this kid to take on the professor? The kid has only been studying for a few years. This professor has been studying for a long time. This kid's a college student. He's not like a little kid. He's a man, right? Just like if I was saying, hey, take a 21-year-old, a 22-year-old, not young, not a kid, but if he's going against a 35 to 40-year-old who has been, MMA champion, undefeated for 15 years straight, yeah, like you're just some kid. This guy is an undefeated champion for going on 15, 20 years. So that's the kind of the picture. It's not that David's a little boy and Goliath's a man. A couple of men, but this man is older. He's got at least a dozen to 20 years on David of flawless victories. So David tells him, check this out, verse 34. Your servant used to keep his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out and I struck it and delivered the lamb from its mouth. And when it rose against me, I caught it by its beard. I struck and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. Recently heard someone say, I forget where I got it from, every time that God has saved you up until this point, has protected you up until this point, is prophetic, meaning like telling the future of what he's going to continue to do for you from here on out. David's like, hey, God's been by my side. I've killed lion, I've killed bear. This is just one more thing that if God's on my side, it's no big deal. So Saul tries to put his armor on David. And then verse 39, David says, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. In most books and stories, and even most pastors, I'm just saying like the pastors I even listen to, they all say that armor was too big for David because he was a boy and Saul was a man. 2 quick points. One, that's not what the Bible just said. The Bible just said, I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested them. If you've never worn armor and then the full-on king's armor, it would be awkward. And if I'm supposed to charge out into battle wearing clunky armor I've never worn in my life, I'd probably say the same thing. Like, I'm a full-grown man. If you threw a knight's armor on me, I would not be able to win against Anthony in a foot race with a full thing of armor on me. But point is he says I haven't tested it. And here's the other point. Even if it didn't fit David, if we forgot, remember Saul was a shoulder taller than everyone. The Bible says that everyone came to Saul's shoulders. He was just that tall. So even if he did, even if it didn't fit David, that makes sense because Saul was taller than everyone by far. But here's an interesting thought. If David was smaller than a full-grown man, do you really think he would have tried to put his armor on him? Especially since Saul is taller than everyone? Like, yeah, you're 7 feet tall, 6'6". Here's a 12-year-old boy. You're going to put metal armor of you on that kid. No, let's give Saul the benefit of the doubt that he actually had a brain and actually could think through things. No, more than likely, David had to be close to Saul's size that he would even try that. So it's just food for thought that David was probably a young man. All right. So David takes his staff. He chooses for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook, and he put them in the shepherd's bag. Pouch in hand, with his sling in his hand, he drew near the Philistine. So the Philistine came and began drawing near to David, and the man who bore the shield went before him. So the Goliath's shield bearer, armor bearer. And when the Philistine looked out and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking, like just a young guy. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come out with me as sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field. Then David said to the Philistine, and I highlighted this because I like this line, you come to me with sword and with spear and with javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you, and I will take your head from you. And this day I will give the carcasses of the camp of the Philistines to the birds in the air and the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. Then all this assembly shall know that the Lord, Yahweh, does not save with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. So it was when the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David. David hurried and ran toward the army to meet after. He's not slowing down. David's charging this guy. Then David put his hand in his bag, took out a stone, and he slung it, and he struck the Philistine in the forehead, so that the stone sank into his forehead, and he fell face on his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and struck the Philistine and killed him. And there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine. He took his sword, drew it out of the sheath, and killed him, and cut off his head with it. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. Now the men of Israel and Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines as far as the entrance of the valley to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell along the road to Sharaim, and even as far as Gath and Ekron. Then the children of Israel returned from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem. And he put his armor in his tent. I just didn't want to read all that word for word. It's just that good.
That's pretty sweet.
I remember some sermon I heard sometime the pastor was just joking about it. It's like, can you just imagine this young guy just running around? He had this armor. He's throwing his hand. He's got the head. He's like, head's like this big. Giant head. Like running around with a giant head. Hey, but that's the thing is, it's a cool story.
Did he marry Saul's wife or Saul's daughter?
We're going to get there. Hold
I
on.
thought you
I know. We got a whole story. We got a whole Bible. Look at all this. We got a lot of Bible to cover.
You skip all the gold.
Roger's a romantic. He wants to know if he gets the girl.
No, because
Does he get the girl? Does he get the girl?
he has like 3 girls.
So, I will say this. I love the little Chuck Smith narrated books that Judah has. It is the one book that shows David and Goliath that actually shows him cutting off his head. Never seen another kid's book where he cuts off his head. I'm like, yes.
We see it?
It's in the room, I think.
Oh.
It also shows Noah on the ark with a dinosaur egg. It's really cool. I love it. It's fun. So, basically, the end of the chapter is Saul's finding out, okay, who's this guy's father? Who's this guy's father? Again, some people think, oh, must be a little boy. Like, where's your daddy, son? No. It's he promised that the whole family of the guy who slays Goliath would be tax-free. So I'm sure he knew David, but he didn't know his dad. Like, I know Alex, but I don't know his dad. I know Roger, but I don't know his dad. I think Saul knew David. He was his armor bearer, but he never met Jesse. So he's just trying to figure out, well, who's your dad? Like, who's this guy's family that I'm going to make tax-free? All right. Now, I didn't start my notes until, chapter 18 into my notes. So here's how things get going now. Hey.
Bud has something to say.
Nice.
Well, it said in chapter 16, verse 18, he talks about saying it's Jesse of Bethlehem, his son.
True.
When he's introducing him.
But in all honesty, though, we actually don't want. I think one of the comments that I heard someone comment on this, I was reading, they're saying, you don't know how much time's passed by. Like, if this has been a year, and it's just like, I'm looking for someone to play me the harp. Oh, Jesse, the Bethlehemite son, will do it. Oh, yeah, go get that kid. Like, I think if you're the king, it probably got blown off. It's just, he didn't probably really know who it was. And either way, I mean, whether Jesse, he was a boy or he was 80 years old, he still was asking who's this guy's father and who's this family at the end. So, yeah, I think I did actually look that up and think about that. But someone just commented, he probably just never committed it to actual memory of who his dad was. And that's one thing, it's deceptive in the Bible when you could read things only paragraphs apart and forget that maybe years have transpired. I don't think years have transpired here, but it could have been months. Because he gets him as a harp player, and then we don't know how long it is before the Philistines show up. Savannah's going to try and find a date in there. She's like, there's a date. There's a date. I'm going to find it. She's going to keep looking. So check out what happens. When they had finished speaking, here's the cool part. Saul's son, Jonathan. Some people make this weird. It's not really weird. These guys just became best friends. Right?
Did
So,
Jonathan die?
Huh?
Doesn't Jonathan die?
Well, everyone dies eventually.
Hopefully.
This is like thousands of years ago. Probably not living in Brooklyn somewhere. Right? I'm just saying. All right. So it says in verse 1, though, that the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Saul took him that day and would not let him go home to his father anymore. So he used to go home and said occasionally to feed the sheep. Now it's like, nope, you're living here full time. And Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as much as his own soul. Jonathan takes off his robe, puts it on David, gives him his armor, even his sword. Like, basically, Jonathan's just saying, like, we're like brothers now. Like, we are brothers. You are my equal. I'm the prince. You're the prince. So they just became best of best friends, super cool, super connected. And David would go out and fight with Saul and everyone else. And it says here in verse 6, right, that it would happen that they were coming home, and David was returning from the slaughter of the Philistine, and the women had come out of all the cities. They're singing and dancing to meet King Saul with the tamarines, the joy. And see, Saul, guys, remember, what was Saul's problem? He was getting full of pride. He was full of himself.
Still?
And so the chicks start singing, Saul has slain his thousands in verse 7. And Saul's getting down to this. You know, Saul has slain his thousands. He's like, yeah.
Spanish song, I don't like that.
Yeah? See, like, it goes like this, right? Like, it's like, we start singing about, like,
David Gonzalez.
Oh, yeah.
like, what do you start singing about Daniel, right? Like, Daniel sinks the three-pointer. Fix the three-pointer. Daniel sinks the three-pointer. And then what happens, like, Daniel's, like, getting down, and all of a sudden it's like, Raul sinks 10 three-pointers. 10 three-pointers. Go, Raul. Now you have Raul. Because here's what happens is, and David, his 10,000s. So Saul was like getting excited because people are like, Saul kills thousands. I kill thousands. I was like, and David kills 10,000s. All says like the screeching record stop. Like, what? Like, yeah, David kills his 10,000s. In verse 8, Saul was very angry, and a saying displeased him. They have ascribed to David 10,000s, and to me only thousands. Now what more can be done but just my whole kingdom? So Saul eyed David from that day forward. So at this point, he's just like, he's freaking out about David now. He used to be my nice little heart boy, but now he's watching him. At this point, Saul turns schizophrenic. He goes cuckoo. Verse 10, they're all chilling, hanging out together, and all of a sudden, but there was a spear in Saul's hand, into verse 10. Verse 11, and Saul cast the spear, for he said, I will pin David to the wall. But David escaped from his presence. So, yeah, oh yeah. Isn't it great that happens twice? And here's David. What do you do when someone throws a spear at you? You don't go back. But David was faithful. He's like, I'm going to go back. Whatever. Saul was just a little angry. You know, we'll get by. We'll get through this. We'll do some counseling. We'll hang out. You know, Jonathan will try and work between me and his dad because Jonathan, when I can't leave his dad, throws a spear, get at him. You know, okay, maybe he doesn't like me. Maybe we got some tension, right? Because he tried to kill me twice. And so here's what happens. Saul now puts him in charge of armies and just kind of sends him out. Okay? Verse 17.
Oh, you got to read verse 12, though.
You got to read verse 12. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but he had departed from Saul. And it's true, though. He was upset. He could see that God's with David, not with him. So, verse 17, Saul promises his oldest daughter, Merab, but anyway, you go out and fight the Philistines. So by the time David gets back, Saul already gave her to someone else.
Wait, who started?
Wait.
His older daughter.
He sells himself for like 7 years and has to work.
Different story. Jacob. With Leah and Rachel.
Genesis.
So then what happens is he's like, well, how about my second daughter? Okay, I've heard Michael, I've heard Michelle. Either way, it's the same Hebrew word. Like in English, it sounds weird calling a girl Michael, but that's like, well, I've known a girl Michael actually. But either way,
Did your brother get mad for calling him Michelle?
maybe you should try though. I give you permission to try and pester my brother. It's your face. So now know what Saul says here in verse 21, I will give her to him that she may be a snare to him, and that the hand of the Philistines may be against them. So he says, you will be my son-in-law. So here's the thing: is like David's like, man, I don't need to be the king's son. Like David thought he was humble. He's like, you should. I can't be the son of the king. Like I'm a shepherd boy. Who am I to be the son of the king? But he's like, nope, you're gonna get my daughter. And so he goes, you need to go out and do some fighting, though, right? Does it seem to you that a light thing that I be king? That's how David spoke. Verse 24, verse 25. The king does not desire any dowry. No money you need to pay me. You don't have to pay big bucks to marry the girl. But he says, but that I get 100 foreskins of the Philistines. This would make the people on Facebook super angry, Roger. Yes. Go circumcise 100 Philistines.
You wanted to like, why? You want to turn them Jewish or?
No, to kill them, and that's just proof you got them. Like taking an ear or something like that. It's kind of really crazy, right? Hey, I didn't write it. But David goes and gets 200. That's got to be the weirdest thing you've ever seen. But we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to dwell on this too much. Huh? It is gross. And the people on Facebook would be really upset if they were watching this right now. Hopefully the circumcision people aren't watching. If you came in late, you missed out all the discussion we had earlier.
Wait, Are you talking about circumcision?
Yeah. Give me 100 foreskins off the Philistines.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
It's not circumcision because they're dead already.
Yeah, they're dead. Well, it's still, I guess,
Yeah. You don't do it when they're alive.
You do it when they're alive. That's the point of circumcision.
Well, nobody killed the Philistines.
I know, but when you get circumcised, you do it when you're alive.
Well, yeah.
That's
Usually when baby.
This is a good after Bible study like debate. We have a real
200 guys.
That is
I know, right? And so the point is, though, is he said 100. So Saul's goal, though, was to get David killed. He was trying to get it so the Philistines would kill him. Doesn't work. So, verse 28, Michal, she loved him. So, boom, they let them get hooked up. And then the princes of the Philistines went out to war. So it was whenever they went out to war that David made more wisely than all the servants of Saul, so that his name became highly esteemed. So, Saul keeps trying to get David killed. But it isn't working. David keeps killing people. Because why?
because God's with him.
Because God's with him. It keeps saying David's behaving wisely. It's basically, he's just being obedient to God. He's listening to God. He's doing his thing. So check it out. Here's where I wrote my actual notes so I can paraphrase things a little better. Chapter 19, 20, 21. We got this. Here we go. I'm going to get my Bible so I can go through this. So, we're moving through the life of David. Alondra, we are in 1 Samuel chapter 19.
What's up, Alondra?
What's up, girl? Okay. So, chapter 19. It starts off with Saul wants to kill David. He's announcing it like, I'm going to kill David. All the way from verses 1 through 7, he's telling Jonathan and his servants we're going to kill him. And Jonathan talks him out of it. So like, I'm just going to start paraphrasing because some of this is just story. We can move a lot faster, but I just say this is how the story goes. 8 to 10, another spear attack. He's hanging out. Next thing you know, David's playing music. Then Saul sought to spin him to the wall with a spear, but he slipped away from Saul's presence, and he drove the spear into the wall. So,
we recap it or
no, this is another spear attack.
not?
I know, this guy in spears, right? Like, why would you even hang out with him if he had a spear at this point?
Like, get kind of hesitant when you walk into the room.
Like, why are people giving him the spear back?
Well, he's the king.
But he's like,
He's the king.
What are you gonna tell the king?
You do whatever.
He might throw a spear at you. You know?
All right, so
it's too high.
then he tries to kill David again. This is like again and again and again and again and again. Saul's gonna keep trying to kill David, and David, like, just keeps coming back. He's like the
Matrix.
yeah. Just,
The Matrix.
So, in verses 11 through 17, Michal tells David, "Hey, Saul's gonna try and kill you again. Okay, he's gonna come try and kill you in your sleep." So she helps David get out the window. She puts like some pillows in the bed. They're like, Saul's like, "I'm ready to kill him. Bring him here." And she's like, "Oh, he can't. He's sick." He's like, "Fine, we're going there." He goes in the room, stab at the pillows. Nothing in the pillows. He's all angry. Rah! Michal, why would you do this? And so she lies and says, "Oh, well, he was going to kill me if I didn't do this for him." So that's her way out. Regardless, Now here's this crazy thing that happens. I do want to look at this briefly, 18 to 24. So chapter 19. So David fled and he escaped. I'll paraphrase a little bit towards the end. He gets to Samuel. And David and Samuel go to that word in verse 19. Naioth, in Ramah. The first word's hard to say. Either way, they go there. Verse 20, Saul sends messengers to get David, but when the messengers get there, they start prophesying. They start like worshiping God and speaking all these heavenly biblical things. So that didn't work out very good for Saul. So in verse 21, he sends other messengers, and they prophesied likewise. And then Saul sent messengers again the third time, and they also prophesied. This is kind of like, I don't know exactly what this looks like, but imagine like Day of Pentecost. Like everyone's just kind of like, that's like speaking in tongues. I don't know what these guys are doing, but they're like speaking out the word of the Lord. They're just like praising God, speaking forth God's word. It's this crazy supernatural event. So every time he sends messengers, that just keeps happening. Every time they get to Samuel. So what happens? Well, 22, then he, Saul, went to Ramah and came to the great well that is at Sheku. And he's asked, or Seku, and where is Samuel and David? And someone said, indeed, they are in Naioth of Ramah. And so he went to Naioth of Ramah, and then the Spirit of God was upon him also. And he went on and prophesied until he came to Naioth of Ramah, in Ramah. And he also stripped off his clothes and prophesied before Samuel in like manner, and lay down naked all that day and all that night. Therefore they say, is Saul also among the prophets. That's a saying we heard last week when he started prophesying. Few things. Naked doesn't necessarily mean naked. Naked, more than likely, many commentators, like Bible scholars who are much smarter than me, comment like, it probably means like took off his kingly outfit, like he wears a king outfit. Yeah. Took it all off, probably just like underwear and tank top kind of a thing. Like just in his undergarments. Probably not buck naked. But here's an interesting thing. God allows all these people, when they come to Saul, something was going down where everyone who showed up was having this supernatural, spiritual experience. And even Saul. And here's the interesting thing. We go back, we talk about, God gave Saul a distressing spirit. He was trying to win Saul back. He was trying to get Saul back on track. But Saul was rejecting God. Yet here, God even allowed Saul to have a taste of that old life again. Back when he first had the Spirit come upon him, he prophesied walking into town. We read about that last week. But here,
What? Oh, do I throw it?
I want to
Is that Benny?
So, my class. So, the point is, though, is that God even has him have this supernatural experience. And guess what Saul's going to do? You go back and try and kill David again.
Oh my goodness.
But the point is, we talked about, God wants to woo you like a guy trying to win over a girl. He's willing to do everything he can to attract you to him, to bring you on your own will to him. He even puts these experiences out there. Hey, I'll try and make you depressed and realize that life without me sucks. Hey, I'll have you come to my prophet, and when you're standing before this guy who's like totally legit and cool with me, I'm going to have you get filled with the Spirit and experience what it's like when you're with me. But Saul keeps turning away. So it's just interesting to see that. So again, he doesn't strip off his clothes and get naked. No, it's just kind of like, part of it's just kind of a humbling thing. Like, you got this guy, you know, who's dressed up as a king and all this king outfits, hanging out with normal people, worshiping the Lord. More than likely, he stripped all that stuff off to where he was just down to normal underclothes. So he was just like everybody else. And he was worshiping God. So it just shows, God, he'll try this, he'll try that, he'll try anything to get you. But he won't twist your arm. He won't force you. He won't knock you out and drag you back to the cave. Oh. So, this is kind of a long story in chapter 20, so we're going to summarize this. Jonathan and David are talking now, okay? That whole scene is over. And David maybe thinks things are getting a little better, but Jonathan's like, no, listen, Dad's having a big dinner. You're supposed to be there because you're like part of the court. But if you show up, he's going to try and kill you again. Well, if I don't show up, they're going to think something's up. He goes, how about this? Verse 6. If your father misses me at all, David tells Jonathan, then say, will David earnestly ask permission for me that I might run over to Bethlehem, his city. There's a yearly sacrifice there for all the family. So he says, well, if he asks where I'm at, just lie to him and say I went to Bethlehem to go sacrifice because David was from Bethlehem. Here's an interesting thought. Here's David lying. Was God okay with this? Was he not okay with this?
No.
I've got to know. Do I have anyone on the other side here?
I feel like
God would be okay with it?
No, because if the Holy Spirit was upon him, he would have dodged him again with the Spirit.
If you just had faith, you'd get
God
away.
would have protected him if Saul had attacked to kill him.
Hey, there's no right or wrong answer per se to this. But it is interesting. I will say this. If you have a guy holding a gun to your head in a mass school
Oh, then
shooting.
no.
Faith.
This is actually a true story, right? Where a teacher, the Sandy Hook, a teacher like saves the room full of kids by like convincing him that they're not in there, and she dies, but all the kids live. Was it okay if she lied? It's kind of those things. Sin is sin. That doesn't change. It's a slippery slope when we start saying, well, this time it's okay to lie, or that time it's okay to lie. But here's what I want to say. In the end of the day, one, if you're a Christian, if you're a believer, you got Jesus, well, guess what? Your sins are paid for. You can just kill the guy with the gun, and God will still cover that, just the same as if you lie. That's one thing. I'm pointing out, like, Jesus pays for your sins, past, present, future.
Yeah.
So I don't need to live my life freaking out if I slip up and sin. I'm avoiding it. I'm purposely living a life of holiness, trying, but I'm not like bent over it. If I think someone's going to kill me, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I'll probably lie. I'm just not that spiritual yet. I'm working on it. Alexis would tell the truth. Oxley. She wouldn't lie. She would smile and tell them the truth because she is spiritual. But
Maybe she can.
the speak of the angel.
I see boxes and I'm assuming that's food.
That's
yeah.
Pizza.
Can I go see the baby?
No.
No.
His
Can we
mom.
hear him
She's
after
probably
hours?
feeding. He might come out again. He might not.
Okay, if he's not coming out, like,
My wife is in there feeding him. She'll be very upset if you're watching.
I'm here because
You have to wash your hands.
All right, back on track,
I'm
people.
here because of God.
Sorry.
Okay, point is this though. Honestly, my opinion. I don't think God's going to like chastise you if you try and save your life or someone else's life. We're talking life or death, and you slip up in a lie. That's not an open book to start justifying. Well, this is an okay lie and that's a not okay lie. I think in logic, if you're going to save someone's life by telling a lie, that doesn't hurt. Like, I don't think God's going to shame you for it.
Well, this is like his own life, though. It's not like he's saving you.
Well, still, I mean, you tell a lie and saves your life. But the point is this too, is that, it's also a faith thing. I've heard people say, well, if you just had faith, that's true too. I think they're both right, really. If David has faith, God will protect him. Just tell him a lie, I'm not going over there. That's just being wise. Either way, the rest of the story is basically a very long and drawn out, okay, you'll lie, I'll go to the dinner, and if I find out at the dinner that he still wants to kill you, we're going to set up the secret code. Verse 17 and on is basically like, okay, I'm going to go out to the field. I'm going to do some shooting practice. Hey, young man, you're going to catch my arrows for me because I'm the prince and you're not. Foo, foo, foo. I'll shoot a few arrows. When the guy runs out in the field, there's a big rock I'll be shooting towards. If I say, look for my arrows closer than the rock, that means you're safe and Dad doesn't want to kill you anymore. If I say, look for my arrows on the far side of the rock, that means Dad wants to kill you. You need to beat me and get out of here. So he shoots some arrows. He's like, oh no, look further than the rock. And David realizes that's the signal. He wants to kill me. I need to get out of here. So those guys get together and they make a covenant saying, hey.
Doesn't he want to kill his son too?
He gets angry at Jonathan and wants to kill Jonathan like now. That's coming up. So verse 42, ending chapter 20, may the Lord be between you and me and between your descendants and my descendants forever. So it's Jonathan and David are kind of parting ways. And I believe, forgive me for drawing a blank, I think it's the last time they ever see each other.
No, but doesn't David come back when Saul kills himself?
You'll find out.
Oh.
Next week.
Ah,
Or you read your Bible.
that works.
So,
We're waiting for him.
basically they part ways, and David's now on the run. David is a man on the run, a fugitive.
He's a king too.
Huh? Well, he is the king. God's recognized him as king, but Saul doesn't. And the whole nation doesn't necessarily recognize him yet either. So, here we go. David and the holy bread. You guys ready for holy bread?
Yes.
Boom. He's on the run. He's got nothing. Like, he just takes off. Whatever he's wearing, that's what he's got. He gets to the tabernacle. He gets where they're keeping the ark, right? And there's a priest there. David's like, man, I'm starving. Can you give me something to eat? In verse 3. And they're asking, he asked David, like, where's all the guys? Why don't you have anyone with you? He's like, on my top secret mission. So that's why I'm all by myself, like CIA, James Bond type stuff. And the priest is like, James Bond, got it. Okay, what's up? And so, I have no common bread, only the holy bread do I have here. So in Leviticus 24:9, the showbread, you go in the temple, you go in the tabernacle, there is this table of bread. It's for show, not for eating. That's why it's called showbread. It's like symbolic, it's supposed to sit there. The priests could eat it. Like when they were going to replace it with new bread, they bake fresh bread and keep replacing it. The priests were the only ones allowed to eat that bread. No one, under any circumstances, according to the Bible, is allowed to eat that bread.
And if someone did?
It was punishable.
Oh.
Yet, David was starving in the middle of nowhere, had nothing. Him and his men, the few guys with him, so a few guys did leave with him, they're all dying of hunger. And so the priest says, okay, well, are you guys like ceremonially clean at least? He's like, yeah, we're good. Days. We're on the A game here, which was like the rule. That's actually in there. And so he gives them the bread. Who's at the New Testament cross passage? Cross reference.
For what?
So Matthew 12, 1 through 8. If you have your pen, please, next to verse 4. Matthew 12, 1 through 8. Your Bible might have that. If you have a Bible with notes in it, it probably has that already.
No.
Yeah.
So Matthew 12, 1 through 8 is where Jesus and the disciples are walking through the field on the Sabbath. They get like some of the wheat and they like shake the wheat out and like eat the wheat. They pop it in their mouth. And everyone gets on their case. The Pharisees like, oh, they're doing work. They went like this. Stone them to death. How many people know that story? Sabbath, New Testament folk? There we go. Okay. So, rather than teaching a whole teaching on the New Testament, the main idea was these Pharisees took the law crazy. And they're like, you cannot do any work on Sundays or on Saturdays for them. On the Sabbath.
They like picked like the top of their crop off just to give them 10%.
They did all this crazy stuff.
Crazy.
So they took some wheat and they shook it to get the seed out from the husk. And then they ate it. But doing this was work. So they wanted to stone them to death. And Jesus explains. He's like, hey, we were hungry, so we ate. Doing that was actually not against the Sabbath law. You can actually read the Sabbath law more specifically, and that was actually okay. But these guys were trying to get nitpick Jesus. And so what does Jesus say? He goes, well, hey, we were just hungry. We're just trying to provide for ourselves. We weren't baking bread and selling it. We weren't Jesus never really broke the Sabbath. And he's saying, no, this was not what the Sabbath was about. And he goes, David, when he was starving, did he not eat the showbread that was unlawful to eat? And they're like, well, yeah. And Jesus is like, exactly. God has some ceremonial laws, but we're talking about saving a life. Someone's starving, you do it.
Where did you get that from?
Huh?
Where did you get that from?
That idea? Matthew 12? 1 through 8?
Under
Huh?
Luke 6, 1 through 15.
check because he said the same thing. There was some.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's
This is 6 months Bible, right?
you've got
I
one.
have it.
I got one.
12, 1 through.
It doesn't say Matthew 12 though.
He says he has in his.
You understand what is it?
Yeah, I think you do.
It's at the bottom. The bottom.
Oh yeah, it does.
There you go.
Where the notes are.
Gotta have your Chuck Smith notes.
That's true.
So, anyway, summarizing, we're gonna get through with King David and kind of finish up.
I looked that far down.
So basically, he gets all this stuff. A couple more little things. He's there getting all this stuff. Verse 7. I highlighted it so I wouldn't forget it. We have Doeg, the Edomite. He works for Saul. He's there watching. Next thing you know, David's like, dude, I need a sword. I got no sword. In verse 9, the sword of Goliath, the Philistines, is here. So David's like, that's a cool sword. I will take that sword. So David now has Goliath's sword. He's ready to rock and roll. He flees to the city of Gath. If you guys remember, Goliath was from Gath. It's a Philistine city. And it actually says here, he goes to Achish the king, and the servants of Achish said, is this not David, the king of the land? Did they not sing of him and others who danced at Saul has slain his thousands, but David his 10,000s? Now David took these words to heart and was much afraid of Achish the king of Gath. So he changed his behavior before them, pretended madness in their hands. He scratched on the doors of the gate and let saliva fall down his beard. And Achish said to his servants, look, you see the man is insane. Why have you brought him to me? Have I indeed a need of madmen, that you have brought me this fellow to play the madman in my presence? Shall this fellow come into my house? So let him go. So it's kind of a funny story. David was kind of clever. Maybe he should have just trusted the Lord, that the Lord provided for him one more time. But he's freaking out because he flees this city, and he's all of a sudden like, I'm at Gath. He's like, I killed Goliath of Gath. Now tell me, Bonnie Dunbar is the astronaut from, right. And if we had a giant who slayed thousands of people come out of Grandview, we would have signs. Goliath of Grandview, right? All over the town. Goliath, home of Goliath, Grandview, Washington. Gath was proud of Goliath. There's no way that, he was the town's glory, this giant who just killed all these people, the big champion of the Philistines. The fact that David killed him, they have their eyes out for David. So people are like, isn't this David? And he gets there and he's like, uh-oh. And so they're going to bring him before the king. So what's David do? He plays crazy. He starts drooling, scratching at the ground. He starts growling. He's drooling everywhere. And the king's like, I don't think that's David. That's a crazy dude. You just brought me a crazy dude. Just kick him out. Send him away. So that was David's crazy idea to get away from the crazy king. So he gets away. In verse 22, he gets his 400 men. This is how I feel sometimes. Read verse 2. And everyone who was in distress, who was in debt, they all gathered to him. Distress, in debt, or discontent. And he became captain over them. There were 400. All losers came to David.
Yeah.
I'm joking. I'm mean sometimes. I love it. Only Savannah laughs, though. No, but the idea is, basically, here's a cool thing. People who are broken and needy, they were attracted to David because he wasn't rejecting them. He wasn't too cool. He wasn't too awesome. He was the anointed king over Israel, the defeater of the Goliath of Gath, the slayer of 10,000s. Yet all these people who were just broken and needy, they felt welcomed by him, and they saw this little army. In verse 6, we find Saul's ticked off. He's trying to find David. Down in verse 9, Doeg, the Edomite. Hey, I've seen King David. I've seen David doesn't know he's king. Yeah, he went down to where the priests are. The priests were hooking up with food, giving him weapons, doing all sorts of stuff. Now remember, when they gave him that, they didn't know he was out on the run from the king. He said he was on a secret mission for the king. So he kind of lied to the priest too. I think he did it to protect the priest. But either way, they get there. None of the soldiers want to kill the priest. Saul's angry. He's like, kill them all. Kill all the priests. Saul's gone loony, right? So basically, he won't do it, so who does it? Doeg, the Edomite, the same character who was there earlier, turns him in. Verse 18, you turn and kill the priests. So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck the priests and killed on that day 85 men who wore a linen ephod, which is just the outfit the priests would wear. Here's an interesting thought. I wrote this note in here. Some of you probably can apply this to figure out who this friend is for you. You decide to become a Christian. You decide you want to believe in the Bible. You want to follow Jesus. You want to do good things. But you still got some of those old friends. The fact is some of those old friends probably have no use for God, no use for Jesus, no use for Bible studies, for church, for any of that stuff. And they're probably just waiting for the moment to kind of come up and get here. Here's this Doeg, the Edomite character. He's watching. He sees something. So he goes to Saul. And next thing you know, he's like, oh yeah, I saw this. And he starts spreading the rumors. Yeah, these guys are helping him. They're hooking him up. And now this friend's ready to swoop in and kill all these guys. And it's just kind of interesting how it's like, I've just seen it take place where you've got like those old friends. And then they tell you that, you know what? Did you hear Daniel was talking trash about you, Alex? And they start, these old friends, they don't really like you hanging out with your new friends because you're different. You're not as cool as you used to be. And so they're willing to go in and start spreading the rumors like this guy. Start saying, did you hear about this? Did you hear? Oh, yeah, he was down doing this. And then once the separation starts, yeah, they're ready to step right back in there and welcome you right back into that life. They're willing to step up and kill off all the people and just bring you right back. So it's just interesting, this guy kind of lingering around, you know, and he's right there when you need him. When you finally really need a friend, oh, yeah, he's willing to take you back. Like, yeah, man, we'll go out, we'll do all this stuff, get your mind off things, and like, yeah, the real friend. You start, it's sad because you get duped by it. Like, oh, yeah, he was my real friend. He was there for me when Daniel was talking trash. And, you know, he took me out and helped me, get my mind off things and get the edge off, and it was good. So all that said, one of the priest's sons escapes. Just a few people get away. They go meet up with David. Long story short, chapter 23, there's a city full of, the Philistines attack a city. David prays like, hey, God, should I go and save them or not? God's like, yep, go and save them. So he goes. Just all of his men don't want to go. They're afraid. He's like, just trust me. You fight with me, the Lord will be with us. They go, they take out the city, kill all the Philistines. Now David essentially has a city to himself. He's like basically conquered the city. The whole city, all the people live there are still there. But like, you know, David took it over. Like the Philistines were destroyed. He sweeps in. But now Saul finds out he's there and he's locked behind the gates. He's trapped. So Saul is going to head there and besiege the city and encircle it. So David's like, well, he's going to pray. Like, is Saul going to come? God says, yep, Saul's going to come. So David prays to God, and he says, if Saul comes, are the people of the city going to hand me over? Yep, they're going to hand you over. So David flees again, which is also just another, a lot of these stories, I'm trying to move through the timeline kind of quick, but each one of them's got these little nuggets of application where it's like, it doesn't matter what good you do for people, don't be surprised if you get sold out. You know, David saw it again and again and again. No matter how much good he did for people, he gets sold out. So basically, now they're in the wilderness, just roaming the desert. This word strongholds in verse 14 of chapter 23, some believe he may have actually gone and stayed at Mount Masada. If you go to Israel, February 2018, you'll get to check out Mount Masada. Huge mountain fortress, very cool. So we have to see here, there's a scene here where basically Saul and Jonathan are talking, and basically, you know, Jonathan acknowledges that David is king. In verse 19, Saul's looking for David. So he's looking all around, trying to find David. Verse 24, moving on down, he's tracking David. They're like going around a mountain, like Saul's on one side of the mountain, David's on the other side of the mountain. David's running from Saul in the wilderness. But all of a sudden, there's some Philistines come to attack an Israeli city, so Saul has to run away, like has to go defend Israel. So chapter 24 is where we are finishing. It's pretty simple. They get to En-Gedi, another place in Israel you can check out. And someday, I hope you guys get a chance to go there. Someday, regardless. En Gedi, all these caves, like all along the hills, all over the hills, there's these caves everywhere. So Saul's looking for David again. He's trying to find him. He's trying to kill him. So here's a fun one. I got to watch Pastor Dallas from Toppenish. A couple of you guys got to meet Dallas. He's a rockin' cool dude. We were at En Gedi, and he's like acting this scene out, and it was really funny. Because basically, it says in verse 3, so he came to the sheepfolds by the road, and there was a cave, and Saul went to attend to his needs. He had to poo.
You know how loud.
I mean, he had to poo. So he goes into the cave to poo.
Wait, is it when he cuts the cape off?
Yep. But little does he know, he happens to go poo in the cave that David's hiding in. So he's in there going to take a dump, and David's in there. And the guy's like, hey, man, dude, you go kill Saul. He's right there. He's taking a dump. Talk about how easy it is to kill a guy taking a dump. He's busy. And he's like a sitting duck. I know. Like,
It's like zombie
I
like
smell
where
though,
they're,
like the
zombies.
smell of it.
yes, it would smell. But you're hiding in a cave, and the guy walks in after you and starts dumping. You know how much you could do. Just chill and let him dump. So, it's probably a large cave. Not like a little tiny hole. Either way, David's like, okay, I'm going to come and get him. Now, I don't know. My guess is Saul takes off his coat to dump, his big king coat, sets it on the rock, walks over there to do his business. Now, whether it's the old Native American Indian stories, scalping people, or it's other war stories, but you see stories where people like, they take the insignia, cut the insignia off of a soldier. It's like a trophy, like I killed a high-ranking officer. David goes, before he kills Saul, goes over to his jacket, goes to the corner, the hem of his garment, and cuts it off. So in verse 4, it talks about it. He's like, yeah, he secretly cut off the corner of Saul's robe. Now, that's the hem of his garment. For what it's worth, that was actually like where our soldiers on their shoulders, or if you're like an officer, right? Stars and bars up on the top. That's where you show off your rank. Back then, they would sew it into the hem of their robe. This is why, in the story of Ruth, Boaz laying the hem of his robe over Ruth was a symbol of him saying, like, I'm going to take you in and care for you. The woman who had been bleeding for years and years and years came to Jesus wanting to touch the hem of his garment. There's like power in that. So it's kind of like there was always an emphasis on that hem of the garment. So it's not just like cut the cutter of your jacket off. It was a significant like insignia he was cutting off as like a little trophy. But then David's heart was troubled because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do this thing to my master, the Lord's anointed, to stretch out my hand against him, seeing he is the anointed of the Lord. So David restrained his servants with these words and did not allow them to rise against Saul. So basically, well, let's see it. Verse 8, afterward, they went out of the cave and called out to the Saul, saying, my Lord the king. Listen how David's still talking to Saul. My Lord the king. Saul looked at him. David stooped down with his face bowed down. He's bowing before the king still. Doesn't matter that Saul's trying to kill David umpteen times. He's still, you're the king. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to honor you. Think about this, guys. Well, I'll save it for the end. He says, why do you listen to the words of men who say, indeed, David sees you harm? I mean, the long story short, he's just going to tell him right here to finish up the chapter. Like, if I wanted to kill you, Saul, you'd be dead. And you know it. Look it. I've got the corner of your robe. Saul looks down and, oh, crap, the corner of my robe's cut off. He's like, yeah, got it right here. You would be dead if I really wanted to kill you. But you're not. Because I don't want to kill you. Everyone's telling you I want to kill you, but I'm not. And he says, and you're still mad at me. Verse 14, after whom has the king of Israel come out? Whom do you pursue? A dog? A dead dog? A flea? Therefore let the Lord be judge, and judge between you and me, and see and plead my case, and deliver me out of your hand. Like David's calling himself a dead dog, a flea. Like, you're the king. I'm just no one. And that was David's attitude. He was very humble. He was humble. He's still like, you're the king. I bow down to you, Saul. You're the king of Israel. Doesn't matter if God anointed him. He always, to the day Saul died, David treated him as the king. You're the king. I respect you because you are the king. And so it was when David had finished, Saul's like, is that you? And he starts crying. You are more righteous than I. You have rewarded me with good, whereas I have rewarded you with evil. Verse 18. And you've shown this day how you have dealt with me and how the Lord delivered me into your hand and you did not kill me. For a man finds his enemy, will he let him get away safely? Therefore may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And now I know indeed that you shall surely be king, and that the kingdom of Israel shall be established in your hand. Therefore swear to me now by the Lord that you will not cut off my descendants after me, and that you will not destroy my name from my father's house. So David swore to Saul, and Saul went home, but David and his men went up to the stronghold. So it all finishes up. They can actually part their ways in somewhat peace here. But the emphasis is that David remains humble. Maybe you've got a scenario like this in your life. But here's the thing. As Christians, you're going to heaven. Then God says what he looks for in us, what he desires for. Things like honoring our parents. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter what they've done. Doesn't matter if they're a believer or not. The Bible, this one, like kids hate hearing this because it's like new to them. Tell us that we're supposed to obey the laws of the land we live in, even if you don't like them. The Bible says you're supposed to pay taxes. The Bible says you're supposed to obey the leaders of the government. That means you can hate Trump with all your heart, but you should have a David-like mentality. Like, you're the president. Doesn't matter. There's never been a president. We've had presidents on both sides of the field here. There's never been a president that I would not have just, yes, Mr. President, if I ever got to meet the guy. Could have been Trump or Obama, or Bush or Clinton or Bush.
What? Oh.
Reagan, I would gladly say yes, Mr. President. That's a different story. But the point is that, yeah, we're called to respect people and be honorable. Even when people are dishonorable towards us, we respond with honor. Saul tries to kill David. Saul tries to kill David. Saul tries to kill David. What does he do? He goes back to his post.
So does that apply to all older siblings, even if they're ridiculously not right in the head? Do we still gotta respect them because they're older?
To submit to everyone in love.
So
love
yes.
thy neighbor as
people.
you love thyself.
Yeah,
So
that's
yes.
a whole fun thing. What does Jesus say? So we take this to Matthew now. He says, right? You bless those who curse you. Bless and do not curse. They slap you. You turn and you give them the other cheek. Here's the other cheek. Would you like to slap that one now? If they take your jacket, give them your cloak. That makes less sense to us. But there was like a lightweight coat that wasn't a huge deal. Then there was this big robe thing that they used to wear that many people, that was their only blanket. That was their tent. That was their house. That was their jacket. That was their snuggie. This is a blanket and a coat. The idea was, though, is that it was against Jewish law to take that from someone because it was like literally in a cold night, it was this thick, heavy wool robe that they would wrap themselves up in, and they would wear it, and then they would throw it and wrap it up if it was hot out. But there was this cloak. It was illegal to take that from someone. Even if it was like, oh, you owe me. The main idea was like collateral. Like, oh, I'm going to loan you something. You got to give me your cloak and I'll give it back. They said you could do that, but you had to return it by the end of the night. You could never hold it overnight. Jesus says they want your jacket, your little lightweight jacket, give them the cloak. Like, yeah, you want a jacket? Here's my cloak too. You can have it. If they say walk a mile, you walk the second mile. Romans, somewhere in my notes, I have the actual Latin term, the Roman soldiers in Latin. There's a term, Roman soldier could come up, any civilian of Rome, no Roman citizens, like Paul was a Roman citizen. There's perks to being a Roman citizen. Any person in the Roman Empire, you tap them on the shoulder, by penalty of death, you now get to carry my backpack for 1 mile. But under Roman law, Romans still put that laws, I couldn't make you carry it further. 1 mile, though. You were by law obligated to carry it. I'd be in trouble if I'm trying to make you carry it further. Jesus says offer for 2 miles. Yeah, you want me to carry a backpack? How about 2? It'd be unheard of. The idea always was that we, in love, submit to one another. They were helping one another, doing things for one another. And I will tell you, the whole Romans 12 thing, at the end of Romans 12, it says, if you bless your enemies, bless and do not curse, it is like heaping hot coals on their heads. I like this because it's mean. But the idea is this. If you really want to win the battle, do good, do right. Do you know what irritates people more than someone who talks trash about their mom? Is someone who never does anything wrong. See, when you hate someone, but when you realize there's nothing you really can say bad about them, like Raul is just stupid, he just ticks me off. I hate that punk. Why? What's Raul do? I mean, I hate that stupid fool. He's dumb. Why? Like, what does he do? I just hate him. Like, because there's nothing you can say. It's like, yeah, he smiles all the time. Hi, I'm Raul. Hi, I'm Raul. He opens the door for people and he's just like, hey, these people rise. Oh, look at me. I'm super spiritual. I'm a nice guy. And like, but that's the thing is like, everyone's like, dude, you're dumb. Like, so you don't like him because he's nice, or you don't like him because he's kind, or you don't like him because he's giving. But that's the thing is like, when we act in love, when other people act as jerks, and I don't know, you guys like, aren't in like the old movies. Like I love old movies, like old movies, not like movies from the 80s when you guys think old movies. I mean like black and white. One of my favorite movies this day is To Kill a Mockingbird. Do you guys have to watch that in school? We actually have to watch that in school. How many people have read or seen To Kill a Mockingbird? Read or seen? One person, the white girl. Come on.
Oh.
You said yes?
Yes.
You're too lazy to raise your hand.
No.
Anyway.
What is that movie?
The movie?
50s, right?
The movie would have been early 60s, late 50s.
I watch TV shows from there.
Nice, I like it too. But, what do you watch?
Three Stooges.
Here's the thing though. I'll close on this. In 2001, give or take, some of you weren't born, others were but babies, Jubilee age. There was this big deal, like Hollywood is putting on this big show. They were going to do the 100 greatest villains of all time and the 100 greatest heroes of all time. It was this big, it was like the Oscars. Like everyone showed up. They made a big fun thing of it, and they went through hero and villain, hero and villain, hero and villain. It was hosted by Arnold Schwarzenegger, who for the exact same character made it on both lists. The Terminator, great hero, great villain. He made it higher on the hero list with Terminator than did the villain list. But in the end, the drum rolls, the suspense. Superman, right, is off. He's already picked. Batman is gone. The #1 hero of all time they picked was Atticus Finch of To Kill a Mockingbird. And if you watch the movie, watching it as a Christian, way different than when I was in high school. Mm-hmm. And you watch this guy. And the thing about Atticus Finch, he's a lawyer in a small town. And basically, it's the white girl, white trash girl, for what it's worth, is saying that this black guy raped her. And it's like death penalty. And it's like a hick town, south. But you find out, they prove it without a doubt. It's her dad, who's been sexually molesting her since she was a kid. But they pawn it off on this black guy. He's got like a crippled hand. Like they prove like he couldn't even hit her. She had bruising like on this side of her face, but like that's his gimp hand. Like he couldn't hit her. Like the whole case is just out of the court. There's no way, out of the ballpark, no way. But they convict him. And everyone wants to like lynch mob the guy. He's supposed to go to jail, but they didn't give him a death penalty. And so everyone in the town wants to kill the guy, and Atticus Finch is standing up for him. He's done all these other awesome, cool things up to this point. But he's a man of principle. And he's fighting for what's right. And there's a scene in the movie that hits this. My favorite scene is the redneck dad of the girl. We're gonna go and we're gonna hang the boy, get out of the way. And no, he stops and he fights him. Well, there's a scene where the guy comes up drunk. Sorry, different scene, I was confusing them. Atticus is going to take care of the black guy's wife and kids. They're poor on a cotton farm. Like they're not like slaves at this point. I don't know. Not good life though. And the drunk white guy shows up, and Atticus is there trying to go help her. And the guy is like, you're a nigger lover, this is not. I mean, he's just calling them names and all this stuff. And finally comes up to Atticus and just spits a huge loogie in Atticus's face, right? And Atticus is like, he's BA, he's really cool. He like snipes a dog from like a million miles away, has rabies, good with a gun. You can tell. Atticus could probably throw down. And I remember watching it like in my adult life. I forgot how it went. It had been so long. I was like, punch him, get out of here. Knock the guy out. I was so ready for Atticus to knock that guy out. And I was so excited. I was like, he's gonna punch him. And Atticus goes, and the guy's like, he's like getting ready, and Atticus pulls out a handkerchief. He wipes off his face. He steps around the guy and goes to help the woman out. And at that moment, I'm like, oh, that was so much more awesome. Because that's when Jesus says, turn the other cheek. It's not like be a pushover and get beat up. If someone punches you, hopefully you guys don't get nice, and you punch them back, like where's the victory? Oh, I have a black eye, he has a black eye, yeah, we blah, 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 blah. But seriously, if someone punches you and you take a hit, you're on the ground, you stand back up, and just, are we through? Like, there's power in that. There really is. And that's powerful that you have the kind of self-control and the love and the compassion and not do that. Like, are you through? And I'm going to tell you, this is where Romans 12, when it says, when you do good to those who curse you, it's kind of like heaping red hot coals on their heads. Some people have tried to spiritualize that. It's like an actual, oh yeah, they would bring people coals on their heads. No, I think it's dumb. I really think it's like, no, it's going to burn them up. Like, I can't believe that guy, he didn't punch me back. He didn't this and that. You're going to enrage those people. And that makes me feel good when I rage my enemies. But probably not the Christian thing to feel. But the point is, though, is that in the end, like, yeah, when you do the right thing, when all the wrong options are on the table, it really does. It is satisfying in the end. It's easy to get in your flesh and hit someone back. It's easy to yell at someone. It's easy to get mistreated and then go right ahead and do something back to the person. But to do the right thing when you've been wrong, it's hard. But in the end, like, oh man, it's good. David does that. And he continues doing that his whole life. He screws up a lot, but he always has a heart for God, to obey God. He stays humble his whole life. He knows when he messes up. So we have a much smaller section to finish next week. So I will just say, though, with David, like, cool story finishing up as we go into the next week. And David's not done. David goes into 2 Samuel. Saul ends next week.
Reminds me of when he was in elementary school. Some sixth graders, or I don't know if it was sixth graders, but I just know they were middle school, came over to the elementary school, pinned him down, and just started beating on him, but he didn't fight back.
See? Nice thing to do.
That's reminds me.
Are you guys related?
My brother.
Another one of the Gomez boys? Wow.
Those are the only ones. Well, besides Jose Luis.
Besides Jose Luis. Well, I've had him in class, that's why. Is he like a half brother or your brother?
Huh?
Is he a half brother or brother?
They're all my brothers.
Okay, but you said Jose, besides Jose, like, these are the only two.
Well,
Oh, yeah, and then there's Jose.
he doesn't even talk to me.
Okay, we're just curious. Lightning? You tell a boy the car they drive. He drives a Ford Lightning. Graduated 2 years ago? 1 year ago. Jose Luis.
Last year?
Last year you graduated? Yeah. Oh, you missed that. Fast track.
Oh.
All right.
Yeah, never.
You
Is it-
have to talk to her, Alondra. I'm out of this.
I know. I want to see.
Okay. Let's pray real quick. Is there pizza in there too? I'm supposed to tell people there's pizza in there. So we'll take a short break. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for bearing with us and getting us through a lot of texts at once, God. But hey, pray things stick, that you do. You teach us, you show us new things. And I do pray each week that we just get to learn more about these stories that so many people don't know, and just that we can see how much great application there is. So continue to work on our hearts, have things stick, and I pray there's something that we can take away and share sometime in the future. So Thank you again, God. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, with pizza,
Run, guys.
she's running.
You get a slice of meat.
I'd suggest to get some before I
I just want to see the baby. That's
You're gonna go?
Yes.
Wow. Go fourth period. Dude.
That was in the middle.
No, they're off together.
Okay.
I can't put the seats like this.
It's alright. I think a lot of members came up and tried to stir it. Yeah, stir it at the base. Kind of reminds me of stuff that should have wish I would have found guys.
There's usually no break between worship and prayer.
Me too. I did fun. And you know what that reminded me of? My mom. When I got my butt kicked by 2 Canadian twins when I was 15. I didn't tell you. I thought
That
I
sounds
told
like a
you.
funny story.
I was there to tell me.
I'm so sad. He's
Did you
sleeping.
stay in the class today for fourth period?
When
They were cheating on you?
Rob, can you